Hi everybody, today is going to be a deep dive into SmartStrike on LakeMaster maps and how it works. Now there's a new mapping system they have called VX, and I've got other videos about the VX chips, but basically both VX chips have SmartStrike on it. I have other videos showing you what's the difference between those two maps, what you get with the premium map and what you get with the traditional mapping chip, but SmartStrike is on both. But it's so complex that it needs its own video. So I'm going to go through everything. I am going to use a Solix to show you this, but the same things you can access on a Helix. Just the menu options are going to be a little different. So I'll be using a Solix to explain how this all works. Okay, so before we get rolling into this, I am in my garage. You can do this anywhere, and that's one of the beauties of SmartStrike. I can try to figure out where fish may be on an upcoming trip, a lake that I'm gonna go to. So you can do this in advance. Just so you know, I do have the premium mapping chip, which I have the aerial imagery here, which you don't need to have, but I just let you know. And I'm gonna use color palette number 3 because that's my favorite color palette. Again, this doesn't matter as far as SmartStrike goes, but I think it'll make things better for you as the viewer. And if you want to learn how these options work, just check out some of my other videos that I've got made. All right, so the basics of SmartStrike is I'm going to go to my menu, which I can do over here on the right side, or I can just hit chart on here, and then I'm going to scroll down to what's called SmartStrike. And I know I've said this before, but both mapping chips, the premium or the regular one, will have this. So I open up SmartStrike, and the first thing you need to do is choose your lake. So I'm in Wisconsin, and I'm going to do Lake Monona, which is part of the Madison chain. So I just have to scroll down to do this. And there it is. So Monona, Dane County, that's the right lake. Now, this will only work on HD lakes. So if you've got a lake that you'd like to use this for that's not HD, then you will not be able to do it. And you'll see the basic screen, there's a map of the lake. It tells me how many points could be accessed on this mapping chip. And that's 6,440,034 points. So there's a lot of data for this one particular lake. Over here, it says preset searches, species search, and advanced. So I'm going to do a very, very basic search just to show you how this works, and then I'll continue to dig deeper and deeper. So under the preset, you can see over here, I have an option of shallow, and their definition of shallow is 0 to 15 foot, and then mid-depth. The mid-depth is 16 to, I believe it's 25 feet. I'm going to check that right now. And then the deep is beyond that. Actually, this doesn't have it. So I'll put it up on the screen here as to what those depths are. Okay, so let's just say I'm going to do mid-depth. Once I do that, the advanced search automatically pops up. Okay, and I have lots of options here that I'll talk about later, but I'm just going to hit execute search. And you can see these little pink icons. Now I'm going to get out of this so you can see it better. And they're all around the lake. And I didn't put in any parameters. I just had it do that. So if I go out one, you can see the pink things, but I'm going to zoom into this one. As I zoom in, they disappear. But they're still here as I zoom in more and more and more. Let me move. I don't know how well you guys can see these purple lines. I'm going to keep zooming in. There they are. So these are areas that they have identified as mid-lake, or mid-depth, I should say, structures. Now, they don't know what species I'm even looking to fish for. Okay? So now, I'm going to show you another thing. Right now, this purple is kind of making it hard for me to read my contour lines. So if I go back to my menu, bring up SmartStrike again. There's a search results bar right here, 100% and all the way down to 0%. That's the transparency of this coloration. So if I click on this, and I'm just going to kind of toggle it back, and you're going to see this get lighter and lighter as I go. It was a deep, deep purple. Now it's turning into a kind of a different shading. And if I go all the way down to 0, you're not going to see the results at all. So that's what that is all about. So if you really want to see the contour lines, you don't want to be on 100%. If I get down into about 40%, I can still see the differential. And I can see that this structure right here, that's 18-footed water, there's 17 foot. So that's what they're suggesting. Okay, so now let's expand this window. And so I didn't put any parameters in. All I put in was the depth. So let's do, here's the depth, 16 to 30 feet. So I'm going to do slope. And what slope is, I can choose flat, gradual, moderate, sharp drop-offs, or very sharp drop-offs. So I'm going to do moderate, let's say. And that's all I'm going to switch. I hit this back arrow, and I can execute a search again. Now it's going to ask me, there's already areas identified. Do you want to add to this or replace it? Well, I'm going to add to it. And let me get out of this. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see. So you can see different structures. And so all we've done is add in one variable. And so now you can see I've got more specific detailed spots. Let me go back to where we were before, this little hump, and zoom in. And it was showing a lot of areas, but now the areas are a little more refined. So I can continue doing that by refining my search. So I go back again to SmartStrike, I expand the window. Sun exposure, I can ask it to only show me the sunniest areas. I can also change the seasons. It's fall right now. I can change the time of day. I'm going to do midday. I could do, so that's the changes I can make there. I can also, well, let me just execute that search. Again, I want to add it. Usually there's a little bit of a delay after I hit all these buttons before it brings up the next set of data. But now, again, I'm refining the search even more. I'm going to go over to this area. There's a little underwater point here, and you can see it's got lots of places suggested for me to fish. Again, at this point, they still don't know the species of fish even. They're just saying these are good fish holding spots. So that's the basics of the way it works, and the choices are just almost unlimited. Now, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to clear the data. So it's going to clear off that whole search. I'm going to expand this back up to being very dark. And let's go back to our preset searches. So let's go through each of these. So under shallow, you've got structure, spot on spot, feeding shells and flats. Under mid depth, you have structure, spot on spots. And under deep, you have structure and spot on spot. So let's look at each. Structure I clicked on before, and your choices are what region of the lake. So I can pinpoint maybe inlets, maybe the main lake channel, especially if it's a flowage or a, some kind of a dammed up lake. I could ask it to focus on the coves and inlets and so on. All right, so then, actually let me get out of that, open that back up. I'm going to go back up here to the presets and just continue showing these. So that was under structure. Under spots, It's got some of the same things, but now it's got things like sun exposure, the aspect. Aspect is what part of the lake. Maybe I'm on a huge impoundment and I would just want to focus on the southwest part. Maybe it's springtime, and springtime, the north or northwest parts of the lake are going to warm up faster than anywhere else. Maybe I have a strong wind blowing from the west and I want to fish the east side of the lake. So those are some choices that you've got. Sun exposure we talked about. Proximity, what that is, if I can choose how many feet I want to be from things like the shoreline or a boat ramp or vegetation or shallow areas or deep areas, bases of drop off. So I can choose that I want to be within, 20 feet of one of those choices. Okay, structure, it says right here, points, humps, inside bends. So all of these are checked off right now. And incidentally, even though I cleared my last search, these are checked from a previous search. So you might want to get more zoned in and maybe do only a couple of these. Points and humps I'm going to keep. Inside bends I'm going to keep. And I'll keep ledges and lips of drop offs. But you've got lots of options as to what you want on your display. All right, here I can save the criteria. So let's say I know I'm going to fish Dane Lake. I set up my criteria. I save it. When you go to save criteria, it's going to say select the search slot. I believe there are 10. Let's just check. Yeah, there's 10 different places where I can save, or 10 choices. So if I click on this, now I would name it. So I would name it Monona Fall, mid-depth, something pretty simple, and I would just hit save. Now I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to get out of those things. Okay, so that's the basics of how that's going to work. Let's close this again. Whoops, I didn't mean to close the whole thing out. Bring it back up. And really, while I'm bringing this up, I would suggest you do exactly what I'm doing. You sit in your garage and you practice. You just start playing with all this stuff, see what kind of searches come up. So let's clear my data again. It's all cleared. So you can see you've got lots and lots of different options. Now, the species search, in my personal opinion, this is what probably 80% of the people are going to be using. I don't want to know where a lot of different fish are located. I want to know where specific fish are. So I can choose a specific target species. And the targets that they have are bluegill, crappie, largemouth bass, muskie, northern pike, smallmouth bass, walleye, yellow perch. So those are the ones that you can choose. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna put in largemouth bass. Now a sub-menu comes up that we didn't see with the advanced search. So time of year, I've got a few more options. I've got mid to late fall, that's where I am right now, so I'll just choose the time of year I am. Time of day, I'm going to go midday because it's cold in the mornings. We don't need to get out early to catch these fish. And then under other criteria or conditions, I've got several other things. I've got choice between clear and cloudy. It's cloudy today. Calm or windy. It's pretty calm. And then the water. You either have to choose clear or murky and stained. I realize there's a lot of gradients between clear and different levels of stained, but this is fairly clear water, so I would go to that. And then I just get out of this. Now, so I've put in all that criteria, but I can still go back to this advanced search and change all these different parameters that we were talking about. Maybe I don't want the whole lake. Maybe I just want, well, I think for this one I will do the whole lake because this lake doesn't have a lot of coves. But as another example, I might expand on the depth. Okay, right now it's 0 to 15 feet. I'm going to expand that out to as deep as 25 feet. So now I've got a bigger, broader area. And again, the choices are endless. So all these things, I'm going to execute the search. So now it's doing this for largemouth bass. It takes a second for it to come up. It's sometimes 5-10 seconds, and it looks like it's got it already. So if I zoom out, you get to, gotta close that. As I zoom out, you start to see all the icons. Most of these icons are along the shoreline. Now, let's face it, largemouth bass, they do tend to inhabit a lot of pretty shallow water, so that's not real surprising. So I'm gonna execute the same parameters, but with a different species of fish. So we're gonna go to chart. And I'm doing this over and over. I'm not cutting this out of the video, so you can really get in the habit of how you do these things. Species specific. Oh, you know what? I had cleared that data. Let's do smallmouth bass. Okay, I think time of year is probably preset. No, it's not. Fall. Time of day. Midday. Other conditions. Clear skies, calm, clear water. Execute the search. And do I want to add that? No, I'm going to replace it because I just want to focus on the smallmouth now. Now this makes sense. We're starting to see some more offshore spots, some rocky spots. This particular lake isn't super rocky, but again, it's giving me places to look. And I'm going to move my cursor over to this little region over here, and we'll zoom in. And you can see where they've got these fish. This is all pretty deep water. 32 foot of water, 33, 34 foot of water. So it's not up on the shoreline like it was for the bass. So another thing, you can see I've executed a search and I've got the icons around here. These were smallmouth bass. But if you've got the premium mapping chip in addition to this overlay that you can get, the aerial overlay, you get these presets. And so I've got one set on navigation. You can see there's contour lines but no shading. If I go to fishing, I've got my shading, but the fish execution or the search through SmartStrike still shows up, and the same thing with user. And then the other thing to know, since I've got with user right now on these layers, I've got it set up for shaded relief. If I turn that off, I'm now going to be able to see the docks because, let me go back to this, I've got both land and water for the aerial display, which for the SmartStrike is kind of nice to know because, let's just go over to a shoreline. If it's showing some fish along a shoreline, which based on my search they're not because it was smallmouth bass for the fall, but I can start seeing docks. And so you might be able to see coincide with an area that they're recommending to fish near shore and that they're recommending to do that, so you can kind of see what the docks look like ahead of time. Again, that can be all part of your pre-fishing. So again, those are features on the premium only. Now another thing, if you notice, I've got the searches. I can go into my, or I can center the data. So what that's going to do is just center the map. So I might be on a really huge lake, and when I hit center the data, it just shifts the lake to the middle of where most of the fish are that they've suggested. So that's not really a big deal. All right, let's do another species search. Let's do muskie. Again, you can do your time of year, fall, time of day, midday. Let's do dawn and dusk. And then my other conditions, cloudy skies, let's say it's a little bit windy and the water is still clear. Execute my search. And you can start to see some spots popping up all over the place. So again, that's the basics of how it works. It can be as complex as you want to make it, and you can keep it as simple as you want to make it. I think this would be an awesome thing to do with a younger fisherman, and put in parameters and maybe try to guess, okay, where do you think they're going to put the fish? So they start thinking about seasonally where the fish are going to be at different times of the year. Again, I could use this as a pre-fishing tool where I get out 3 months in advance prior to going to a lake, and let's say I'm going to fish a tournament, but I'm only going to have 1 day to be on the water to pre-fish. I might execute 5 or 6 searches and save them with different parameters. And then when I get to the water, I can bring up the different searches for mid-lake or for shallow water. And then when I'm actually on the water, just start fishing those few spots and see if I can figure out the pattern that they're on. But it's going to at least give you suggestions of where to go first. So you're reducing down 90% of the water. Now, don't be fooled. I mean, you still have to catch the fish. So just because it's telling me that right along this slot here, there's going to be smallmouth bass, doesn't mean that I'm going to pull up to that spot and they're just going to jump in the boat for me. You still have to be a good fisherman. You still have to tie good knots. You still have to use good baits. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Now I can see the break lines there. So as I zoom in, based on the conditions, the time of day, based on what I'm reading, are the fish suspended? Am I going to throw a jerk bait? Am I going to throw a bottom bouncing jig? I mean, you still got to do those kinds of things. I have heard people talk about, well, I got SmartStrike and it didn't help me catch any more fish. Well, again, you're not just going to pull the boat up and they start jumping in your boat. You've got to still fish. Okay, so I said earlier that it will save your criteria. And if you go to execute a new search, right here, you've got your save criteria or clear criteria. Now, it thinks that I want to do a new search, so it's not lit up. But if I come in here, again, I can clear the data, but you probably also want to start off by clearing criteria every single time you execute a new search, unless you're just trying to add to your existing search. So I hope this was informational and helps you out. Again, it's a valuable tool. And then the thing is, you used to have to buy a SmartStrike mapping chip. Now this comes as part of the price with these mapping chips. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay, this is one of the VX ones. This one is a traditional one. It's not it's not premium, but it's got SmartStrike on it. And then the one that's in my unit right now is a premium one, and you can tell the difference very quickly and easily. This one, the coloration is just blue, and on the premium ones they're very colorful, kind of like my map is right here, and it'll actually say premium on there as well. So that's the basics of how SmartStrike works. It's one of these tools that you really have to play with. There's so many options that I can't tell you exactly how you need to set yours up for your searches. You're just going to have to play with it. So again, thanks for watching, and I hope this helps you guys out, and good luck on the water.